All right. Thanks so much, Daryl. I appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for taking your time out and joining me on the webinar today. I'm really looking forward to it. So what are we going to talk about? Well, first of all, for those of you who might not know me, my name is Allison Ostrander, and I'm the Director of Risk Tolerance, as well as an options trader here at Simpler Trading. And tonight I'm going to talk about my game plan for trading 2021. So just to start off the bat, some of the things I'm going to be talking about in tonight's webinar will be examples of the strategies that I am planning to use into next year. And so one of these is low risk, high reward. This was a trade on Netflix I actually did earlier in December. I opened the trade on the 8th, closed it out on the 11th, locked in a 302 profit per contract, which was a 254% return on the risk. So great risk versus reward there, very nice profit to lock in. So let's keep going, right? Let's talk about how I'm doing this. So what you'll discover on tonight's webinar. Well, first, what I'm looking at in 2021, I'm going to give you some charts to show you what I'm looking at the start of the year for a bullish sentiment. So these are, actual charts that you guys can look at yourself. And if you agree with my analysis and what I'm seeing, feel free to take some trade ideas off of it, right? We're also going to talk about sticking with what works and a trading plan that matches your lifestyle. Also, talking about taking advantage of prime setups in 2021, as well as high probability trades and low risk versus high reward trades. So for those of you who don't know me, just to start off, like I said, my name's Allison, and I started my trading journey fresh out of college with a BFA in theater performance, right? Not this standard route that you usually hear about from a trader. And so my dad actually introduced the idea of trading to me. He introduced it to all his kids. He thought it was a good idea to start learning. He himself was starting into his options education. And so I was kind of the only one to jump on board with it. To me, it sounded like a much better way to support myself than waiting tables. And I thought maybe it could also help support my endeavors in the theater world. And so I started attending one-on-one webinars. I started paper trading to kind of prove that I knew what I was doing. And then once I had a paper account grown up to 30,000, I decided to do some one-on-one coaching. And from there, things instantly clicked. And on my very first cash trade, I recouped my coaching fees within it. I also locked in a profit. And at that moment, I realized I had discovered a second passion. I was instantly hooked to trading. And so trading seemed easy at first, but there was a problem that was bubbling below the surface. And maybe some of you guys have also run into this problem as well. It's what I like to call the dark side of trading for my Star Wars fans out there. And so there are a few things that were negative to me in regards to trading. The first thing were my eyes were glued to my charts and futures long after market closed. I kept looking at how Asia was opening, right? How Europe was opening, how that in turn might affect my trades, what futures were doing. And of course, me staying up, kind of fretting about all this stuff, ended up with a lack of sleep, right? And on top of that, it was also due to how many trades I had on. I had an overabundance of trades, and it kind of caused me to stress out, of course, keeping my eyes on the futures. And so this kind of combination of things ended up leading my emotions guiding my trading instead of the technicals, which is what I had learned off of, right? I started learning off the technicals. That's how I did well in paper trading and everything else. But as soon as that real money got involved, it all of a sudden led to my emotions guiding it. And so in turn, when my emotions started guiding my trading, right, I kind of had hopium, hoping a trade would turn around rather than just watching the technicals and saying, hey, this isn't going to follow through on the signal, or you've already given it enough time. Maybe you need to look at some management. And so in turn, I would end up with a staggering loss. And so when I took a big hit, I kind of took a step back and I was like, okay, where did I go wrong, right? What was I doing different compared to before? And I realized when I took a look back, when I took a look at all the negative things I didn't like about trading, I realized they all stemmed from one issue, and that was capital risk. And in turn, it was what my own personal risk tolerance was. And so this lack of understanding capital risk fed into all my negative thoughts about trading, and it fed into that dark side. And this ended up causing more emotions to guide my trading. And when the emotions guided my trading, it led to further losses, right? So once I realized that capital risk and overall risk was the reason for the dark side of my trading, I knew it all of a sudden became my new focus, right? Risk became my main focus around trading, and it still is today. Each trade I took constantly had me analyzing my risk versus reward on the individual trade, as well as my overall account. And anytime I took a look at trading, or I look at developing a new strategy, or looking at new indicators to put on my charts, right? All of this focus is still around risk, and it's always my guiding focus whenever I place a trade or I'm teaching a class or anything like that. So that's a little bit about me. So 2021, what am I looking at going into the start of this year? So as we start 2021, and knowing that we are still feeling some of the lingering aftershocks of 2020, I want to continue to be mindful of where I put my capital for trading. And so this means I will be looking for a few different things to accomplish my trading goals for 2021. And of course, you're probably asking, right? Well, what are your trading goals? Well, for myself, my personal goals are to grow an account only using my toolbox of trades and paying myself once a month in profits. So I have a few different accounts. I have my main accounts where I like to test things out with different strategies and things like that. But I specifically created an account this year so that way I'm only using my toolbox of strategies, and I'm going to see how much I can grow it each month and pay myself each month in order to do so. I also want to start growing an account for my kids based on longer term setups. So I want to look at, of course, growing it with options, but also look at jumping into some shares, right? Some longer term plays and just holding on to them and see how I can grow an account to eventually give to them when they get old enough and maybe want to trade themselves, or, if they want to cash out and do something else with it, completely understand. And then, of course, I want to continue with my $500 challenge once a month. Some of you guys might already know that. It was something I started last year. It's something I'm continuing with this month. And so I want to continue to do that once a month and see if I can continue to be successful with it each month. So how to accomplish your 2021 goals? Well, once I have my goals lined up for 2021, which you just heard about, I now need a game plan in order to accomplish it. And having a game plan in trading is just as important as having one in sports, right? If you're on a soccer team or you're on a basketball team and you just and you're the coach, right? Just like you're the coach of your trading, you let your players go out there with no clear vision on how to accomplish a win, no plays, no way to do a layup or to do a corner goal or anything like that. You're probably going to end up in a loss, right? Because the other team already has that advantage. The other traders already have that advantage against you. So having that game plan is a great way to start your 2021 trading, journey. So the first part of accomplishing my goals, the first part of my game plan is sticking with what works, trading with a plan that has been profitable, right? And it might sound simple enough, but last year was a great test for many traders out there. Some were new traders jumping into the market for the first time. I know I had a bunch of people that are friends, right, that are in my age bracket, family members being like, hey, should I start looking at investing? Whereas, before, anytime I talked about trading or the market, it kind of just went over their heads. They're like, yeah, that sounds great, whatever. Now all of a sudden, it seems like everyone's interested in it. And then, of course, there are others, right, more seasoned traders wondering at the start of the year how long this meltdown was going to last. And so the question was, did you find yourself scrambling or always behind on the move that was occurring? Or did you find yourself ahead of the curve, right? And for myself, I found myself ahead of the curve due to my technicals. And very quickly, here is a monthly chart of SPX on the monthly time frame. And you can see here, right, during the dot-com bubble, during the 2008 housing crisis, we had strong downturns within the market, and then we had great pickups following that. Here, recently, with the whole coronavirus situation, we had similar signals telling us that we were going to see a downturn, and then similar signals telling us that we're getting a bounce up. And right now, going into the end of last year and the start of this one, we are getting a beautiful buy signal to the upside for a long-term bullish trend. So The market is setting up for a potential stronger bullish trend to the upside, one that could last several years based on the history that we've seen on SPX, right? So how will I take advantage of this bullish run in the market for 2021? Well, the answer is simple. It's by sticking with what has worked. So, right, if it's not broken. So if sometimes as a trader, it's easy to not look back at the year prior to evaluate their trading. They just keep recreating the same mistakes or are maybe always looking out for the next best thing. I know if I never took a step back to figure out, capital risk was my issue with trading, I would certainly be making the same mistakes and probably continuing to lose money. So I know I myself too am guilty of the second, right? I like to try and discover new strategies and indicators. I like to test out different things that will aid in my overall trading plan. However, it's also important not to lose sight of what has been profitable for you so far, right? What's worked. And for me, this means to continue trading using my profit recycling and overnight profit strategies, as well as my main chart setup. These strategies have a great win rate and have been in line with my main goal of my trading plan and low risk trading. I do have a mastery service out there, and we've been using this toolbox of strategies. And so far, out of the 51 trades that we've been able to close out of to date, we've only had 5 losses, right? So we've had 46 wins out of the 51 closed trades. So it's a 90% win rate so far, which I'm very happy with. So it's finding what works, right, and sticking with it. So this doesn't mean that I will not test out new things, right? I know how I am as a trader. I know my personality type. I'm not just going to stop trying to test out new things because that's just who I am. But it means that I will size in my account accordingly. The majority of my accounts and the capital within them will be using these setups to continue to grow them in 2021. So by going back and reviewing what has worked for you, whether it's strategies or chart setups, or maybe a specific symbol or a combination of all three, right? You can then take what has worked and implement it into your trading plan for next year, or in this case, for this year. So the majority of my capital that I set aside for trading will be using strategies and setups that have worked. Yes, definitely a Star Wars fan. Big nerd. So here's an example of that toolbox of strategies and what's worked. So here's TTWO. I opened the trade on the 19th of May, closed it on the 20th of May, locked in $130 profit overnight, which was 124% return on my risk. So putting the majority of my capital into a trading plan that is working helps create a profitable trader. I will still look to put a small amount of capital into identifying new potential indicators or strategies, but the key word there is small, right? I'm not going to over put the capital in my account. I'm not going to over invest in my account on something that I'm not sure is going to be a winning strategy or a winning setup. I'll invest a small amount, test it out, and then confirm whether or not it is. This way, if it's something that is not working for my account, I don't end up blowing it up, and I can ideally manage it back with my winning setups. So setups into 2021. So now that I've identified what strategies have worked for me and have applied it to my trading plan for 2021, what are some of the chart setups that are preparing themselves for the opportunity to use these strategies into the new year? Well, here's an example of a recent monthly chart, right? This is one of the setups you might want to look for into the start of 2021, and it's on Disney. Disney has a beautiful monthly setup that went into the end of last year to continue with a stronger bullish trend to the upside that, once again, based on the monthly chart, could last a few years in time. So this is one that, if you guys want to write it down now in your journal, right, to take a look at tomorrow morning or maybe to evaluate later tonight, please do so. To me, Disney is looking good to the upside, at least for the start of 2021. And of course, longer term bullish. MDT is another one that is having a beautiful setup right now with the technicals that I like to use. Once again, going into the end of last year, everything is prepping itself and looking like a continuation of the overall run that it's been in, and continuing that into next year as well. So steady and true symbols, just like the strategy. I'm also going to look at symbols that could do well both with or without the coronavirus still being a concern for next year or, for this year, right? Names like Microsoft and Amazon, who are consistent in their overall trend or will do well regardless of the coronavirus and stay-at-home orders, right? Microsoft is a consistent bullish trend. It usually does well year after year, so no fault there. In regards to the coronavirus situation, it's not as affected. If anything, it helps out with their video meetings and things like that. And Amazon, of course, well, the coronavirus has already compounded onto the shift from retail to digital shopping. So even as people head back out into public, it's less likely that we will see a significant drop off from this whole consumer shift from retail to digital. We saw this prior to the coronavirus already starting to take place. We were seeing major, retail chains like Macy's, JCPenney's, Nordstrom's all starting to shut down. And in turn, Amazon has just continued to grow. And so the same thing can also be said from working from home, right? So these are two symbols that I'm certainly going to be keeping an eye on and looking for other symbols that also might not be as affected due to the whole coronavirus situation, or might not be as affected by the market itself. So here's actually a monthly chart on Amazon. And for those of you who are members of the options room or, members at Simpler Trading, you've probably already heard me talk about this several times from November all the way into today. And the reason why is Amazon has made a beautiful setup in November to look for a potential move higher going into the start of next year. And it technically hasn't followed through on the signal yet. So it's still a valid signal to take, with the idea that we will see some sort of move back to the upside. My goal personally is a move back above 33.66 or higher. So once again, if you want to write that down, right? To me, Amazon looks like a good monthly chart setup. And it's also one of those symbols that isn't going to be as affected by the whole coronavirus situation. So trading for any lifestyle, understanding the time you have to trade. This to me was an important lesson to learn the last 2 years. So I recently made the wonderfully and maddening decision to have not one, but 2 kids born in less than a year. So they're Irish twins. And after my first daughter and with another one on the way, I felt that I had started to get into a good groove of the work and family life balance. And I thought that this new flow would continue to last. And then, of course, it was a new way of life for everybody, right? The coronavirus hit. And not only did the market start to plummet, but stay-at-home orders were issued. And I found myself once again at home trying to balance work and trading. And my daughter, who still proves today that she likes to run the show, and a little baby boy who has literally a bottomless stomach. And so it's trying to figure out, okay, how much time can I actually devote to my trading now? And how much time, of course, do I have to give to my kids, which is constant, right? And also balance the whole home life, trying to stay on top of laundry and dishes and all that fun stuff. And so this new way of life meant that I needed to focus on trading that would match my lifestyle, right? Up until this point, trading had been a constant focus in my life for years. I mean, I couldn't tell you since my first maternity leave when the last time I took a vacation was, because I was just nonstop focused on trading. The only vacations I usually took were around market holidays. So because of this, I now had to put to practice what I preach and make trading fit my lifestyle. So going into 2021, I know that my time will still be split as I chase little ones, especially now that they're learning how to walk, and have other responsibilities at work and my trading. And so I also know that I typically do not like to hold capital out there for very long, right? It's good to understand what your personality type is as a trader. And for me, I don't like capital being out there very long. And so for me, these dilemmas are easily answered with the profit recycling and overnight profit strategies. Having trading strategies that work with my hectic lifestyle that I know have been proven to work, right? That have that good track record with my plan and of course my personality type for trading will keep me focused and successful in 2021. So both of these strategies allow me the flexibility to do other things throughout the day while having a stronger focus during just the open and the close of market. So I, will try and look at things throughout the day, but the main times that I am focused straight at my computer and maybe still juggling a baby, but focused on my charts, right, is at the open of the market and certainly at the close of market when I'm putting on most of my trades. And it's also important that these strategies did not give back on my trading plan and goal, which is low risk trading, right? So just because I have to be adaptable with my trading plan and hours does not mean I should give back on the risk. It's also important to find strategies that will not only fit with your lifestyle, but also fit with your trading personality, right? Understanding, are you a lotto trader? Are you somebody like me who doesn't like to have capital out there very long? Are you a long-term holder, right? Do you like to get in and just watch things go and, not necessarily get out for a few weeks or a few months or a few years? So understand what your trading personality is, understand what your plans are, and understand what your goals are. So for me, these strategies still fit with my personality, my plans and goals, and they also fit with my new lifestyle. So once again, an example of the overnight profit strategy, I opened this trade going into the close on October 9th. I closed the trade on October 12th. This was a weekly chart setup. So I actually opened this on Friday going into the close, and I closed it out Monday going into the open. And one of my accounts, in the smaller account I was trading out of, it was a $55 profit, which was 100% return on the capital risk. So you can see right there, very small risk, but excellent profit potential per contract. And the slightly larger account I had, I took a 103 profit per contract. This still was an 80% return on my risk. So once again, it's about keeping my risk low, not keeping my capital out there for very long, and having consistent profits along the way. So if you're able to sit in front of your computer for the majority of the market, then you have the abundance of strategies to choose from, right? It's kind of dealer's choice in that case. If you can only trade during half of the market day and don't like to hold capital overnight, you may look at trading intraday styles, right? Maybe doing the profit recycling strategy for intraday moves, or if you're able to, just doing straight day trades. Or if you have things that you do during the majority of your day and want to play things slow and steady, you may look for a longer term swing trades or shares to jump in, right? Kind of like some of the charts that we're talking about with Amazon and some of the other ones I'm highlighting here going into the start of next year. So speaking of long-term setups, right, one of my goals is to grow an account for my kiddos. And a part of this can be done using the strategies that I mentioned, but I also want to focus on buying and holding some long-term setups in their account. So my question is, of course, what will be, and I'm sure every trader's question, right, is what will be the next Tesla? What's going to be the next Apple or Amazon? And can I buy in now and just sit back and enjoy the ride with it, right? What symbol is going to do that for me? And so with the influx of new traders as well as new IPOs, this can cause a lot of interest to build up in symbols that might not have gotten the same type of exposure otherwise. We saw this case in point just going into the end of last year with some of the IPOs that came out, and then all of a sudden all these traders, and I'm sure my generation of millennials didn't help, but all these millennials and other traders just jumping in immediately. And so looking at newer IPOs that just came out within the last year or two, like DKNG, DraftKings, right? As well as new ones on the way, like Coinbase and Databricks. These are two in particular I am going to keep a close eye on when those IPOs are released. One is around cryptocurrency. The other one is, data and getting all that data and understanding it. So both of these will not only spark newer traders who are looking to get in early, but as well as the millennial trader mindset, right? So these younger traders are coming in. They might not necessarily know a lot about trading, but they're looking at things that they're familiar with. So like cryptocurrency, right? Or understanding, of course, that a lot of online companies take our data, use it, sell it. And so, finding ways to be profitable off our own data and trading, right? So I will still look to my charts and technicals for guidance. That's not going to change. I'm not, about to just throw out that part of my plan, but like I do on all my trades, right? But keeping an eye on these newer millennial driven stocks could allow for some quick profits in the accounts. You can anticipate stronger volatility, a higher volume of traders, and potentially quick gap moves that can aid in growing an account. So also, as we know with IPOs, sometimes it's just best time to jump in to a company and then sit back and hold. This could be a great opportunity to work on my 2021 goal of growing my kids' accounts based on the long-term setups. So here's MPW. This is another monthly chart I'm looking into for the start of the year. Notice that the cost is $21.79. So it's relatively inexpensive. This is one I'm actually considering opening for my kids' accounts because it's inexpensive. So it fits in with my low risk. And the technicals are there, at least at the end of December, right? The technicals are there for a great longer term bullish run setup. So take advantage of prime setups. Know when to put your capital to good use. So I'm also going to look at symbols that have a mind of their own, like Tesla, right? You've probably heard this word before, but honey badgers that don't follow the market and that do their own thing can be a safe place to put capital. If the overall market goes down, it's less likely for these symbols, right, and these signals to listen as they march to the beat of their own drum. So as I focus on honey badgers in 2021, I will be keeping my eyes peeled for when these symbols demonstrate what I like to think of as the perfect setup. And when a honey badger symbol has the perfect setup, it can be like having star power and a blue shell and a line of banana peels throughout the entire race of Mario Kart, for those of you who are gamers like me and know what I'm talking about. So, and for those of you who don't, right? In other words, you're unstoppable. It's a go time. So there are plenty of times as traders when we go through the charts and we find okay setups, right? Where some, but maybe not all of your signals are in agreement. But then there are those special moments when everything is in agreement and we find those perfect setups. So Tesla actually in 2020 gave a golden weekly signal that screamed buy me. And if you're an options member, then you heard me talking about this setup like a broken record when it was happening. And this signal was great for both shorter dated trades. We actually took a shorter dated trade within the options room off of it and took a nice profit on it. But it was also a great setup for longer dated trades and setups. So here was the Tesla and here was the weekly setup in 2020. It was a beautiful setup with my indicators to look at going bullish. And you can see great run follow through. It took a pause. Another re-entry, right? If you took profits, maybe you weren't trying to hold it longer term and then you saw the re-entry, another re-entry to take into the end of the year. So trading with smaller accounts and always keeping an eye on risk, I couldn't just buy into Tesla shares or long calls as I would have liked to do. And keep in mind, this was before the stock split. After the stock split, I actually got into a share in my kid's account, which, is nicely up today. But I wish I could have done that when the setup happened. However, I kept with my trading plan. I used strategies that had low risk and high reward ratio, and that allowed me over that time to accumulate a minimum of $3,203 of profit per contract on this run up, right? And this is based off of just one contract on these trades. So here's an example of one of those trades. I took it on the 17th of August. I closed it out on the 20th. I took a 767 profit per contract, which was a 329% return on the risk. So excellent return on my capital risk, excellent profit per contract, right? Very low risk. And it was taking advantage of this perfect setup. So when you see the perfect setup, even if you have a small account, there are times when you should take advantage of your max risk tolerance. Now, this doesn't mean that you're throwing out your max risk tolerance for the account into that trade, right? For me, this means that if I'm willing at max to put in, let's say $1,000 into a new trade, when I see that perfect setup, that $1,000 is going into that new trade, right? I'm not going to put 500. I'm not going to put, 300 or anything like that. No, the 1,000 is going into that trade. And these are sometimes the magic opportunity to lock in some nice profits for the account or have your account situated for a long-term hold. So these perfect setups will be something I will continue to look for in 2021. You don't need every trade to have a perfect setup, right? You can make money off of okay setups, but a few of these perfect setups through the year can potentially have a huge effect on your account. So here's a potential perfect setup for Goldman Sachs, GS. And this one has already actually started to take place. So I took this snapshot right at the end of December, right, going into the next year. And for me, if it started to break this level here on my chart, it was looking for a good longer term buy entry. And this month it started to break that level. So it's already started to go into effect of what I'm looking for a longer term setup. It's already started to explode to the upside there. So still doesn't mean you can't jump into it, right? But the setup has started to occur. So you might wait for a pullback if you wanted a longer term position on GS. But let's keep going. So high probability trades and low risk versus high reward, being mindful of your risk. So one of my 2021 goals is to continue to do my $500 challenge once a month. I saw some of you guys asking about the challenge, so I'll be talking about it here. And this will be a great test of growing a very small account while sticking with my trading plan for 2021. And so some of you may be asking, how are you supposed to be mindful of risk growing an account of only $500, right? It's easy to put $500 just into one trade on one contract. So what am I supposed to do with only $500 in an account, let alone be mindful of the risk there? Well, I've done this challenge twice last year. Technically, I ended the second challenge a little bit early because I was going on maternity leave for my son. So I didn't want to be stuck trading in the hospital like I was for my daughter when she showed up early. But using these strategies for the $500 challenge last year, in total, I locked in $953 before commissions. It was $808 after commissions. And this was a 161% return on the $500 of risk in roughly 2 months. And you can see here, not all the trades were winners, right? Some of them were losers, like this one here in Intel INTC. That one was a loss for me. But overall, once again, having a strategy where it has a high win rate to it can still easily make up those losses and allow you to be successful at the end of the year. And so by doing this, right, for roughly 7 weeks, right? I paid myself at the end of the first challenge. I took my profits out, did the second challenge, and then paid myself again. But doing this, I never invested the full $500 of capital. I always had cash in the bank when doing this challenge. So that just goes to show you that, of course, I'm not putting all my money into one trade. I've split those up between multiple trades, and I never had the full $500 invested, and I was still able to grow the accounts and make some money off of them. So one way to be mindful of capital risk in a potentially crazy market environment is to look for strategies with a high probability of working out. And this could be due to an indicator, right? This could be due to the win-loss rate of a strategy, like I mentioned, or the option strategy itself is more forgiving of movement. So to talk about my indicators, right, the Batman and Robin of my indicators, one of the ways that I found to identify high probability setups was with the divergent bar and the compound breakout tool. When I get the divergent bar and ideally the compound breakout tool in agreement, I know there is a high probability that the price will follow through with a higher high or lower low within the next several bars. And these signals allow me to stick with my trading plan while being mindful of where I put my capital. So here's an example of one in Match. I took a bullish signal back on October 22nd. I actually profit recycled the trade on October 23rd. And so the minimum profit on this trade, right? The minimum profit that I was walking away with once I profit recycled the trade was $375 or a 65% return on my risk. Here is another example in Plug. This was one that we did in the options room. So I took the signal on the 4th of November. We profit recycled the trade on the 5th. It was 103 minimum profit per contract, which was a 64% minimum return on the risk. That's what I did on one of the contracts that I held on this trade. On another contract, I held it a little bit longer and just took it as a profit. I didn't profit recycle it, but both of those contracts were profitable for me in my account. So what's setting up for my dynamic duo in 2021? Well, actually McDonald's on the monthly time frame is. McDonald's has a great divergent bar and a compound breakout tool set up going into December, and it looks great to follow through. And I believe when I last checked it today, it has not yet followed through on the signal. So this one too is still valid to look for into the start of next year. Or this year, I should say. Sorry, I wrote this in 2020, so you can understand. If you have a strategy that also has a high win versus loss ratio, it only makes sense to add that to your trading plan when going into 2021. Having a strategy like this in your trading plan ideally will help your winners outweigh your losers and keeping your account in the green overall. The overnight profit strategy is this way for me. And currently the win rate that I have on this is around 90%. So 90% win rate on this toolbox of strategies that I use. So Here, once again, was the other example on plug I mentioned. I also opened that trade on the 4th. In this case, I did the overnight profit strategy on it. I closed out the trade on the 6th, and I locked in a $148 profit per contract, which was a 91% return on my risk. So in 2020, if you piled into shorter dated long calls before the market pullback, then your account took a hit, right? And the long calls and puts can give you that unlimited profit potential, which as a trader sounds excellent. It can also cost a pretty penny when tying up capital in your account. So for 2021, focusing on strategies that allow for a high reward while keeping a low capital risk can be a great way to still grow the account in another potentially volatile year. So here was another example of Tesla with that perfect setup, right? Still keeping my risk small. I opened the trade on the 20th. I closed it out on the 21st. I literally only held it overnight, right? And I took a $1,530 profit per contract. So just on one contract, that was the profit I took. And it was a 392% return on risk. So here's another one on that Tesla. This one was more recent. It was opened on the 16th of December. It was closed out on the 18th. Here it was a $50 profit per contract. Technically, it was only a 12% return on risk, but this was an example of a very forgiving option strategy where I knew it had a high probability of working out. So I wasn't too concerned about how Tesla traded, as long as it just didn't trade the one direction I needed to, or moved past the one strike in reality that I needed to. I knew I was going to walk away with some sort of profit, and that's what ended up happening there. So being mindful of capital into the new year, right? So each trade, ask yourself, how does this affect my risk for my overall account? How does the individual trade risk versus reward look? Is this a perfect setup on the charts, or is it just an okay setup, right? If it's a perfect setup, you might go with your full risk tolerance. If it's just an okay setup, you might only do, 500 of the 1,000 that you would normally put in, or something like that, right? And of course, does the strategy make sense with the overall chart setup, right? Does the strategy match what you're seeing on the chart? A long call doesn't necessarily match with a consolidating chart, right? So understanding what to use when, and how often does the strategy work out, right? Does it have that consistent win rate? So knowing the answers to these questions can help you determine how much capital you want to put into a trade, or even if you want to jump into a trade at all. So what's next? Well, blowing out your account can be frustrating and disheartening. I've been there myself, right? That's what had me take a step back and look at capital risk and understanding, what the dark side of trading was for me, and refocusing everything around risk as I do trading now. In the current work from home environment, even the most seasoned traders can still have problems with juggling responsibilities and still growing their accounts. I have been there myself. I've been doing trading for over 10 years now, and I'm still, I've just now started to get into this Zen-like mode of, okay, here's good setups, here's good returns, here's when I can trade with my lifestyle, and now, okay, let me go and focus and try and wrangle in the kids, right? And then, of course, everyone can use some extra clarification on the chart and narrowing down great entries and exits. So once again, right, just to reiterate what my goals are for 2021, I want to grow an account only using my toolbox for trades and paying myself once a month in those profits. I want to continue with the $500 challenge once a month, right? Only risking $500 of capital, being mindful of that risk and seeing how much I can grow it within a month's time. And I want to do that ideally each month out of this year. And then start growing an account for the kids based on long-term setups. So keeping my risk at the forefront and my toolbox by my side, and with my dynamic duo of indicators ready to pounce, I am ready to start growing my accounts once more in 2021. And so do you, right? Does player 2 want to enter the game? Do you want to take that call to adventure? And so if you do, you are more than welcome to join my Profit Recycling Mastery and get monthly live trading sessions with me, as well as getting the alerts, right? So who's this program for? Well, the goal of the Profit Recycling Mastery is to target short-term moves without triggering that dreaded 25K day trading rule limitation. That's my goal on every live trading day. Ideally is to try and find some live trading setups if we have the opportunity to, and to be able to take advantage of these intraday moves without technically triggering that rule. And I do that using the profit recycling strategy. It is also ideal for traders who want consistent weekly gains with maybe limited time or limited capital to be able to invest. So if you've ever struggled with risk like I have, or you want to learn my toolbox of strategies, or maybe you want real-time trade ideas, feel free to come and join the mastery with me. And it's not just me that it's worked out for. I've gotten plenty of people who have come and emailed me, who have talked to me in the chat, saying how well that my setups and my strategies have worked for them, and how they've also been able to implement and take what I use as my trading plan, make it so it fits their trading personality and allows them to grow their account, right? Because we're not all the same trader. But the idea is that you're taking from the mastery. My main goal is that you take from the mastery what you can learn, and you apply it to what fits for your trading style. And ideally, of course, I also want to teach you how to fish, but I also want to give you some fish, right? Sometimes when you take a class, it can be a lot of information at once to just take in, right? And it kind of takes you some time to understand the information and to really get an understanding of the strategy. Well, by joining the mastery, you can learn in real time with me. You can actually see the trades that I'm opening in my account, right? With real money. I don't want to be losing on these trades. I certainly don't want y'all to be losing on these trades. And so the idea is that I can give you some fish first, right? I can catch you a few salmon. I can show you how to cook it. And then that way you kind of get the hang of what I do to make my profits on these trades, and then implement it for you and yourself. And these are the live trading days that we have coming up for the rest of the year. In December, for example, we kind of had some technical issues, so I threw in an extra live trading day. I don't mind doing that every now and then into the new year if it fits with the trading schedule. But I really look forward to these days because it gives me time to actually hop on the mic and talk with y'all. I am also in the chat too. I try and be in the chat as much as I can be while trying to trade with 2 kids. But I do try and be constant in there as well. And so if you do want to join, there is early bird pricing. This pricing is going to go up later this year. So if you want to jump in now, the quarterly membership is only $397 for the quarter. The annual membership is $1297. Now, if you had followed along with me on the $500 challenge last year, right, you already know that that challenge easily could have paid for a quarter of trading in the mastery and was very close to trading for the overall annual membership if you wanted to do that. The percentage of trades, like I said, I've had 51 closed trades so far. We've had only 5 losers, right? And even with some of the full losses that we've taken on those losers, by being mindful of the capital risk that I initially put into the trade, as well as with the high probability of wins, we've been able to offset those and still be net ahead overall. And the $500 challenge, I will be doing each month. So a quarter makes up 3 months. So, you know, for 3 months, I'll be doing that $500 challenge. And in the mastery, I don't just alert out the $500 challenge trades, right? I have an account specifically in line with the mastery where I open the majority of my trades and I follow my 25% rule. This is a rule that I've come up with, that I've created for myself to help me develop risk tolerance. So you can certainly learn that in the mastery as well. But the mastery program, it includes the live trading once a month and includes real-time alerts. So we started this mastery, I want to say in late November, and we've already had 51 closed trades. So if you're asking, you know, well, how many trades do you put on? I think there's only been less than a handful of days that I haven't put on a trade at all. Most days I am finding a setup, and we're in and out of trades pretty quickly. So, and then of course you'll have access to my trade spreadsheet. You'll see all the trades that I'm in. You'll see all my notes behind them, right? What I'm looking at. I try and explain that in each of my trade alerts. And then you'll also see the reason why I'm closing out of them as well, right? Maybe the signal followed through, but it wasn't a good follow through, so we're taking the smaller profit. Or maybe it was a great follow through, and this is why we're taking a profit recycling strategy rather than just closing out of the trade, right? So with this mastery program, you can watch over my shoulder as I scan through trade setups. You can understand why I might lean towards one setup versus another to jump into. I've gotten that question plenty of times within the chat, and I'm always happy to explain why I like one symbol versus the other. You know, people always ask me too, can I look at this strategy versus this? And I give them my 2 cents on why I would prefer this strategy over another. Or if you do decide to go with a long call, maybe then a vertical, here's what I would look at personally for a long call. So you get my insight, you get my 2 cents on what I think. And of course, we catch up once a month for some live trading where I can discuss real-time setups with y'all. And also answer any questions you have. Those monthly sessions have been, I feel like, great education for people who have been in the mastery, because they're able to really ask questions, and then I can pull up in real time, charts and explain to them what I'm seeing and help answer their questions that they may have. And always within the last hour of that live trading session, we're scanning and we're opening new trades. And Mitchell, absolutely. So Mitchell's asking, are there any trades I can trade with a $1,500 account? Yeah, you could follow along certainly with the $500 challenge trades. And you can also follow along with the trades that I do in the mastery account. For the mastery account, I actually only have $5,000 in it currently. And with my 25% rule, I only put $1,250 into new trades, $1,250 into new trades. And so, if you wanted to adjust your risk tolerance for your account, technically speaking, I won't be usually going over that $1,250 of risk unless it's management or something like that I'm pulling out from the other side of the account. So you should be able to follow along with that too if you wanted to. So on top of watching over my shoulder, you will also have access to my personal watch list that I run my scans on. You can also choose to follow along with the same trades that I'm placing in my account, right? If you like the setup as well, you can choose to follow along with the alert. And all trade alerts will be sent out through the room and can have push alerts, right? Push notifications sent to your smartphone so you never miss a trade action that I'm taking. And so for traders who also like longer term setups, there's also a bi-weekly video. I do it every other Thursday, and I show you what symbols I'm keeping an eye out for on a Friday entry. And the best example I can give of this, it was actually this past week. So on Thursday, I actually stayed up really late in the morning finishing the bi-weekly video. And then Friday rolled around and it wasn't that long into market. I had just done the trading room session that my internet just completely went kaput on me. And I cannot tell, this has probably been the first time that I let the dark side of trading get into me, just because there were so many great setups that I was keeping an eye out for Thursday. And I missed some opportunities because that happened on Friday. However, I mentioned those setups in the bi-weekly video. So people who had access to the mastery had access to what I was trying to keep an eye on for Friday and were able to take some of those trades themselves. And on one of these setups was Eli Lilly. And for those of you who saw Eli Lilly this morning, it had a huge gap up and follow through. And I'm, it was out of my hands, but I'm still kind of kicking myself for not being able to jump into that trade, because it was just a beautiful setup and it was a beautiful follow through. It was on the top of my watch list. So if you had caught the bi-weekly video, right, and I ended up being out of commission like I was, you still have the opportunity to take those trade ideas, right? You still see what I'm looking at and you can still decide how to take a trade off of that chart. So, and then of course, understanding what market environments have me leaning towards a specific strategy and why, right? If 2021 is anything like 2020, we could experience a down market, a choppy market, an up market, all within the same year. And we could certainly see some interesting volatility and market moves. And so, understanding what strategies I might lean towards in a particular time of the market might help you as well, and understanding what I'm doing and then applying it to yourself and applying it to your trading plan. So here's just, some other testimonials, if you will, of people being able to take my strategies, take the way that I like to trade, apply it to their own accounts, and then be able to follow along and have had success with it. And I'm really hoping that if you guys do decide to join the mastery, you too can follow along with the success that we've had. And most importantly, right, understand how my style might fit for your trading personality type, for your trading plan, and hopefully help you grow your accounts as well in 2021. The time of day that I usually enter trades is within the last hour. I start scanning within the last hour, and usually within the last 30 minutes of market, I'm getting into trades. So as long as you can really be there for the last hour of market for opening trades, you're good to go. Closing trades, I try and close them in the morning, but just like anything with the market, sometimes those triggers get closed out later in the day. So keeping your phone by you, certainly helps out, or having your good till cancel orders in place helps too. But for opening the new trades, I'm very strict about it. I open them within the last hour or 30 minutes of market. It's very rare that I might open them at a different time of day. Case in point, today, for example, was one of those rare days because I went back and I looked at those Friday setups that I wanted to try and get into last week based off the weekly chart. I looked at some of them again this morning, and the ones that still had valid signals, I jumped into a few of them. But otherwise, I usually open those trades within the last hour of the day. So some more examples of people using the indicators. Now, I saw somebody ask, what indicators do we have to buy? Technically, you'll have access to my charts, right, in regards to the live trading days, and you'll have access to my trade alerts, which I'm basing off of my indicators. So if you didn't want to necessarily purchase an indicator right away, you don't have to. But the main two indicators that I use on all of my setups, or that I take into consideration at least, are the divergent bar indicator, which is my Batman, and the compound breakout tool, which is my Robin. So if you had to choose one of the two, I would certainly lean towards the divergent bar indicator, ideally first, just because that is the main indicator I look to take the majority of my trades off of. And then, if you want to as well, the compound breakout tool is a very good add-on to that, because when those two are in line, it makes great setups. And the strategies I like to use, it's a combination of things. Verticals are a big ones that I go with, debit and credit spreads, butterflies, unbalanced butterflies. And we do in the Mastery have a learning center. So in the learning center, I do talk about what profit recycling is, and help you understand that. I also have classes that go really in depth into it. I can literally talk hours about that strategy, so don't get me started on it. But in the Mastery, we do have shorter, condensed learning center videos that talk about the profit recycling strategy, that talk about the overnight profit strategy, they talk about the indicators. So you do have that you can also go to for help. And so at the end of it all, right, I want to leave the guesswork out of your trading with a simple step-by-step plan. I want y'all to be creating profits in your account while spending less time in front of your computer. And I also want you learning about the different strategies in the toolbox that I have, as well as my dynamic duo setup for when I enter a trade. So if you do want to jump on, right, but maybe don't want to pay all at once, especially if you're doing something like the annual fee, which is cheaper than, of course, doing it by each quarter, you can do it with PayPal credit. It's something that we accept now. And so you can apply for a line of credit through PayPal with 0% interest for 6 months. And that's a great way to be able to trade for the Mastery. And if you wanted to, right, it's a great way to also use some of the trades within the Mastery to help pay for it, right? So if you get some nice profits within the first month of the Mastery, you can then take out that money, if you're able to, and apply it into paying yourself and paying off the credit to allow yourself to end up with the overall profits there. So once again, the quarterly membership is $397 for the 3 months. The annual membership is $1297 for the full year if you decided to do that. So I really, am looking forward to continuing with the Mastery. We've had a great win rate and success rate so far, even with how the market was, right? The market was kind of a little bit choppier going into the close of the year. We didn't really get a strong Santa rally like we typically see going into the end of 2020 necessarily into 2021, but we are still able to make that work. We are still able to adjust our strategies when we start to see that slight market shift and still be able to take winners overall. So Tom, great question. How do you relax with an over weekend risk versus just overnight? It's off the signals, right? The dynamic duo of indicators plus the overall risk that I put in the trade is usually small. It's well within my risk tolerance. So I mentioned, right, understanding low risk versus high reward scenarios, as well as having a setup and a strategy that has a high win rate. So knowing that I have a high win rate with these strategies is how I'm able to take sometimes the weekly or even the monthly setup and still be able to hold on to it longer term. Now, I don't necessarily like holding on to it too long. But because of the win rate and stuff like that, I'm still okay taking those trades. And the second thing I'll note is on the weekly chart, at least, whenever we take setups like that, it's oftentimes not surprising to jump in on a Friday and still take profits on a Monday, right? Sometimes, like Eli Lilly, for example, it had the setup on Friday. It immediately followed through on the signal Monday to where you were probably taking it off right at open. So even though it's technically based off a weekly setup, and usually I give myself a few weeks to allow the signal to work out, oftentimes I find the signal working out pretty quickly. So that's how I'm able to do that. Otherwise, you're right. I don't know if I'd have the patience to hold on to the trade that long. But with the indicators that I have, with the setups, it allows me to do so. And yes, when the price goes up later this year, you will be grandfathered in at these prices. So that is the benefit of jumping in now, right? If you wanted to wait a little bit, I understand, but you just have to understand that when the price goes up, you'll probably have to pay the bigger price, right? So if you wanted to lock in now at the cheapest rate that this mastery will ever be, this is the time to do so, right? This is probably the least expensive it's ever going to be to jump in. And if you do jump in now, right, and you like what you see, and you want to continue being a part of the mastery, you'll at least be grandfathered in at this rate. Mitchell, it all depends. So Mitchell's asking with a 1250 for position size, right? So 1250 is the max I put in for my mastery account. Approximately how many option contracts would that typically be? It depends on the trade. And it depends on the setup. So I can find a lot of setups within a day, and I usually like to put my capital within those different setups. So for example, I think right now in the mastery account, I don't have the account open, but I think we have 5 or 6 trades in there currently, right? And I believe they're all one contract size, and we still have capital left over to still be able to do some new trades if we want to. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea of what I'm looking at there. And of course, right, you can always up the contract size. You can always down it depending, well, not usually down. I usually do the minimum amount, but you can always up it and decide what works for your account size. And then, of course, I'm already answering questions, but if you guys have any more, right, let me know. I'm trying to scroll through the chat here. Amit, you do need an account that allows for vertical spreads. So certainly what I recommend, you could try and do the setups off long calls or puts. I've had a few people do that off of my strategies before, and some of them have been able to make it work out. But if you really want that low risk style of trading, certainly having the account be able to trade vertical spreads, right? Any sort of option spread is going to benefit you, because that is mainly what I do. That's how I keep it low. So what you can do is you can always talk to your brokerage platform and say, hey, I need to increase to this, certainly say, I know what I'm doing, and they should be able to increase that for you. Yes. So Pierre, I do have my P&L for each trade. It is on the spreadsheet, and it is available to all my members in the mastery. So we have a spreadsheet where it shows all the open trades that we're in. It shows all the closed trades. It shows if we let them expire for worthless. It showed, if we closed it out for a profit, if we closed it out for loss. I think we have one trade that we closed out for break even. So it shows all those. And we are actually working on the spreadsheet to make it a little bit more streamlined. So it has a P&L section just there. It has a sheet just for open trades, for closed trades. Right now, it's just all kind of on one spreadsheet, but we are working on to making that a little bit nicer for y'all. But you do have access to all that. I'm completely transparent on showing you guys, here's what I opened, here's what I filled, here's what I closed, and here was my thought process behind the trade the entire time that we were in it. So. And no, Maddie, not at all. You do not have to own stocks for verticals. In my mastery account, I have 0 stock positions on. They're all option trades. And I don't plan to hold any stock positions in the mastery account. Maybe I shouldn't say that, unless I see like an excellent setup and a really cheap symbol that is in line with my risk tolerance for that account, maybe, right? But no, you don't have to own any stocks to jump into vertical trades. And VJ, the spreadsheet is available in the mastery section. of the profit recycling. So I don't have that up currently in a tab, but that there is a section under the profit recycling mastery where you can see that. Let me see if I can pull it up really quickly just to show you guys. Yes, so Silver, AXP, McDonald's, Netflix, those are all trades I am currently in, Randy. You are absolutely correct. So if you guys do decide to hop on with the Profit Recycling Mastery, this is what the dashboard looks like. It shows you the trading room schedule. Here are learning center videos that I've done, right? So I talk about strategies. If you're not new to option strategies like butterflies or verticals, I give you information about those. I talk about the strategies that we talk about in the mastery itself. I talk about the indicators. I'm actually going to add another video in here about unbalanced butterflies. So it's something I do look to continue to update the more I get questions about in the room. And then here you can see we have the bi-weekly video updates. We have the live session archive here. We have the learning center. As I mentioned, here's this trade spreadsheet. So currently we have 63 trades in total between open and closed. And you can see once we start to go down, the majorities have all been closed out, right? We have the watch list. This is my own personal watch list that I used. Now I will be mindful. PCLN is technically in my watch list. For my watch list, I never usually take off a symbol. I just keep adding to it. So you'll see Priceline in there, which technically isn't Priceline anymore, but it's because I don't delete symbols. I just add to them on ones that I have found to be successful with my chart setups and strategies, but you'll have access to that. You'll have the Thinkorswim link if you just want to immediately put it on. And so that's the dashboard. That's everything that you'll have access to in there. John, you don't necessarily need to purchase them. So that's what I think the mastery is great for. The mastery is a great way to be able to kind of test out the strategies and the indicators. So that way, if you find yourself saying, you know what, I really lean more towards the overnight profit strategy versus profit recycling, then you can kind of choose to dive into that deeper education if you want to afterwards and purchase the class if you want a more in-depth information and education around it. Or with same thing with the indicators. If you see me continuing to put on these trades and you're like, man, these indicators really work. I think, the divergent bars would also work great for me with voodoo lines or something like that. Then you can decide to purchase it for yourself. But I think the mastery is a great way to kind of test out those things before making a bigger purchase like that if you want to. So profit recycling, basically, just very short term, because I do have to get going soon, unfortunately. I hear a feeding coming on. But the profit recycling strategy is a way to where I can lock in profits and then have my capital protected and recycled back into my account and still have a free, what I like to call a bonus trade out there for an extra profit potential, but where the trade itself has no more risk on the table. So that's kind of the idea around the profit recycling strategy. The overnight profit strategy still technically has risk, but it's about taking that profit quickly. And as the name might suggest, right, taking it overnight. So putting it on at the close of the market and ideally taking your profit off at the open. So I hope that answers that. And then, yes, so the indicators, if that's what you're asking about, they're available on Thinkorswim, they're available on TradeStation, and they are in the process of being added to Tastyworks. I'm very excited about that. Last I heard, they were, towards the top of the list to be put onto their platform. So I'm very excited about that because I use Tastyworks for my accounts mainly. The only account with Thinkorswim that I have is for the $500 challenge. So, but does anyone else have any questions before I do have to hop off? And of course, if you do, right, maybe you decide to rewatch this or you're watching the recording now and you have some questions, please, please, please feel free to contact support. We are here to help you. And if you contact support, they, have heard usually the question before and will be able to answer it right off the bat. And if they haven't, right, if it's something, they can always message me and we'll be able to get back to you with an answer really quickly. Oh, great. Yeah, I look forward to seeing some of you on board. I'm really looking forward to it. So We've been having a lot of fun in that room. It's a great community too. We keep the chat open in the mastery. So it's also a great way for you to connect with other traders in there. And, you know, kind of test out things for yourself. I always see people in there saying, hey, what do you guys think of this symbol with, you know, what Allison's strategies are with her setups? And, you know, you'll have other people participating and saying, oh, I like this, or no, I don't really like that. I'm not going to get into it. But it's a great way to bounce off ideas, or if you have questions, people are always happy in there, willing to answer questions. It's a really good community. I'm really happy about it so far. So, you know, hopefully we'll continue to keep it positive like that. So that's the main thing I see. Thank you guys so much for joining me here. I appreciate it. If I missed your question, I do apologize, but please feel free to contact support and we'll be able to help you out. As always, for my Star Wars fans out there, may the trade be with you. And I really look forward to seeing some of y'all in the mastery. And if not, I hope your 2021 goes excellent for you guys and you're able to grow your accounts well. And as always, just my last note, please, please, please be mindful of your capital risk, right? We don't want any of y'all blowing out your account. So maybe just keep that on the forefront this year for your trading as we go into this uncertain year of 2021 with everything. Looking forward to the year ahead. But thank you guys, as always. I really appreciate you being here tonight, and I look forward to talking to y'all again soon. Bye.